again, everybody. So today I'm back, and it has been a while again, I'm aware, but it's all of a sudden the end of 2015. It's the middle of December now, Christmas is next week, and it's about time we start looking back at the past year's worth of reading. The books I've read, the things that I've really enjoyed, the things that I want to read more of next year, and to just set myself some targets for 2016. Because I always feel like I just read a bit willy-nilly, and I'm looking forward to setting myself some more strict restrictions on what to read next year. The first thing I really need to say is that 2015 has been a really, really amazing year for books. There's been a ton of really cool re-releases, there's been some really cool new releases, some returning authors, and then personally, I've read some really interesting books, old books, that I just never read before, that I've been wanting to get around to for a long time. I've reread some of my favourite series, and it's just all in all, I think this year I've not really read any bad books. But some have been better than others, of course, but it's not been a bad year at all, and I'm really pleased with the books this year, and I'm hoping next year will be just as good. I am going to be doing an awards show, similar to what I did for 2014, going over my best books in different genres and my overall best book and best character and what I'm most excited about for 2016. So that'll be coming later on towards the end of December. But for now, I'm going to look back over my year of reading, which consists of these books here. So this is everything I read this year. I set myself a target of 60 books on Goodreads, and as of today, I'm currently on 72. Get in. Yes, 3 of them are Penguin Little Black Classics, and 13 of them are manga. But I'm still taking them, it still counts, I've still read 72 books this year, and just looking at the selection here, it is a really interesting random bunch. I've done a bit of maths, I've worked out some of the statistics, and of the 72 books I've read 16 like general fiction books, 1 classic, I was hoping to read more, but I only read 1, 1 poetry title, 8 sci-fi books, 5 crime books, 7 young adult books, so obviously there was a bit of crossover with sci-fi and fiction there as well, 13 manga, as I mentioned, and then my biggest genre by a long way is non-fiction. It always is with me. I've read 21 non-fiction books this year, and that covers everything from sport, quite a lot of history and politics, quite a lot of smart thinking, popular science. It's just been a really rounded bunch of books I've read this year. And just looking at the shelf, you can see that comes across. There's a lot of manga standing out, some really cool sci-fi stuff, some non-fiction. It's just been a good batch this year, and I am really pleased with what I've read. However, obviously there are always areas that I wish I'd read more of. So I'm really glad that this year I read a poetry book. And it wasn't one I'd have chosen to read. I read it for the Guardian First Book Award, which I've talked about previously. I'll leave a link to that video in the description. And I enjoyed the process of reading it, similar with short stories. I never really read short stories by choice, but I really enjoyed reading it as part of that. And so next year, some of my targets are pushing myself outside my comfort zone to read things that I don't normally read, but really, really want to. So, I've set myself 6 targets for next year. Target number 1 is to read 3 classics. So I read 1 this year, I read The Secret Agent by Joseph Conrad, but I just know I need to read more. I've probably only read 5 classics in my entire life, and most of those are for school. And I mean, Wuthering Heights is one of my favourite books ever, and that's a classic, but I just need to read more. I own a few, I've got things like Dracula, and I just want to get round to reading, and I'm going to try and read 3 next year. I don't know what, I think Dracula will be one of them, but I definitely want to read some more classic books and just give myself a better grounding in older literature. As a slight spin-off from that, I also want to read what I'm calling 3 modern classics. So again, this year, somewhere over here, you can see I read A Clockwork Orange. And I loved A Clockwork Orange. I thought it was brilliant. Obviously, it's a book/film that loads of people know a lot about. But I've always wanted to read a little bit more. And this year, there are things I've never read, like 1984. I've never read Catcher in the Rye, To Kill a Mockingbird. I've never read any of those things. And this year, 2016, I'm going to make sure I do that. I've set myself a target of 3. Could possibly look at reading more if I want to, but I just want to make the most of those amazing books from 30, 40, 50 years ago and finally get around to reading them. So that's 6 older books I want to read there. And from then on, it's new genres that I want to look into. So I want to read 3 sports titles. So this year I read a singular football book, The Secret Footballer, which is about a ex-Premier League footballer basically just blowing the lid on what it's actually like playing football in the Premier League. And I really enjoyed it. And football is something I'm surprisingly quite into. A lot of people are quite shocked by that. But I want to read more of that kind of stuff. There's already 4 or 5 sport books that I've picked out that I would quite like to read. Probably including a couple of biographies. So I'm going to look at 3 sports titles to read for next year. Possibly more if I enjoy them, but definitely want to at least hit that minimum of 3. It's a good increase from 1 this year. But again, it's just a genre I'm really interested in exploring a little bit more. Similarly to that, a genre that I've kind of touched on this year, but not as much as I'd like to, is short stories. So until last year, I had never read a short story or a collection of short stories for anything other than school. But this past couple of years, I've read 3 or 4 short story collections, and I've always really enjoyed it. One of my favourite fiction books from this year is Man vs. Nature, which is here. And that's a short story collection, and each story feels like a whole book. And I know there's a lot of amazing authors, people like Roald Dahl, people like J.G. Ballard, people like Margaret Atwood, that have written these really interesting, cool short story collections. And I just need to read more of them. And I've set myself a target of 3 again. That's 3 short story collections, not 3 short stories. Don't worry. Just because that's a nice number and it's achievable. And I'm really hoping I get the excitement about it to actually go into that and do that for once. Everything's crossed for it, and I think it should be a genre that I'll enjoy exploring a lot more. Outside of looking at particular genres of book, I also want to read some specific series. So there's 2 that I've had my eye on for a long time that I just haven't got round to. I own them all, but I haven't read them. So the first one, I started this year, I've read the first book, and that's the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. So my dad, this is probably his favourite book series ever. He does not shut up about Brandon Sanderson. I've met the guy a couple of times, he's amazing, and I don't know anybody that's read them and not enjoyed them. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved the first one. My problem is, I've not been able to commit to a series for a while. I think there's so much interesting stuff like non-fiction that I've really enjoyed, that it's so standalone that you can just pick up whenever, that it's kind of detracted from me reading series, but I need to finish that series. I loved it. He's writing more books, the whole of the series he's done, which is meant to be just as good, and I want to get that finished. So that's one of my targets for this year, to read the last 2 books in the main Mistborn trilogy, and hopefully that'll inspire me to keep going with more Brandon Sanderson stuff. The other one kind of covers a bit of a genre goal as well, that I want to read more crime books, and specifically, I want to read the crime books by C.J. Sansom. So C.J. Sansom writes historical crime, and it combines history, which I love, and crime, which I've always enjoyed. And I don't know anybody that's read them and hasn't raved about them. And I own the first. I got it from a second-hand bookshop 6-7 months ago, as I've shown on the channel in the past. And I know I will enjoy it. I just need, again, to get into it. They are quite thick books, and it's quite a long series. But I just need to do it. I need to get into it, and put it on this list will make sure that that happens. So there we go. That's my 6 targets for this year. Now, I'm inevitably going to forget most of them. I've written them down. I'm going to stick them up. I will remember. 3 classics, 3 sports titles, 3 modern classics, 3 short story collections, the C.J. Sansom books, and the Brandon Sanderson books. That is so achievable, and they're all things I'm really excited about reading at this moment in time. So fingers crossed that'll all work out. As I said, I will be back in the next couple of weeks with quite a lot of wrap-ups. I'm going to do a bit of an update on my TBR jar. I'm going to put some new books in. I've taken some old books out that I'm not that fussed about anymore, or I've happened to read anyway. And I'm going to look back at how I did with that over 2015. Not very well. But I'm hoping that I can pick that up, and that'll help me drive through some of these targets as well. I'm also going to do, like I said, a year-end award. I will leave a list in the description down below of all the books that I've read this year, in case anyone's interested. You can also follow me on Goodreads and keep up to date with what I'm reading at the minute. But definitely have a flick through the list down below and let me know what you think. If there's any areas you think I've really neglected, Let me know. I'm always after recommendations on what to read, and even just on specific genres people think I should explore based on what they enjoy. Throw them at me. I'm always after recommendations like that. Other than that, it's great to be back in front of the camera. I'm looking forward to doing quite a lot of stuff in the next few weeks to really wrap up 2015 in style. If you've enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. It's really appreciated. And I will be back in the next week or so with my next video.